Just 10 games into the season, and the Sacramento Kings have already abandoned all of their talking points and pillars from training camp and the preseason. Winning the fight, defensive physicality, 94 feet. Did they give up on it, or did they even believe in it in the first place? The Sacramento Kings give up 144 points on their home floor to the Minnesota Timberwolves in their 7th loss of the season already. And Doug Christie spoke very passionately about defense after the game. You'll hear it all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And a major theme, I guess, of this podcast tonight is going to be, Matt, what on earth did you expect? You talked all summer long about how this roster makes no sense, how the construction is bad, how Scott Perry inherited a mess from Monty McNair's regime here in Sacramento, and how all he could do over the course of this summer was try and put whatever duct tape and super glue he could on it to keep it together for as long as possible until contracts run out. And knowing the Sacramento Kings hired Doug Christie as their head coach, a defensive first head coach, just like Mac Brown was, by the way. This roster being expected to suddenly play defense, that seems like a pipe dream, right? So, Matt, what did you expect? The Kings giving up 144 points? Yeah, you best believe that's believable for this Sacramento Kings team. I think my answer to that question is I expected Doug Christie's actions and the actions of Doug Christie's roster to at least support the words. Kings lose 144 to 117 tonight. Their last two home games, tonight and Friday's loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have lost by a combined 58 points. One of the things we hear Doug Christie talk so much about is protecting home floor. He rides for this city, right? This is where he had the most success as a player. He talks about the unfinished business that he has in this city and how it's important for this team to represent this city properly with how they play on the floor every single night. And the Kings have lost, again, by a combined 58 points in the last two games in this building in front of their fans. 10 games into the season, the Sacramento Kings are 3-7. They have given up 120 or more points in 7 of 10 games this season. They've given up 130 or more points in 4 of 10 games this season. And tonight, they surpassed the 140-point mark in regulation. Not overtime. Oh, no. Regulation. They gave up 144 points. This is not going to be an anti-Doug Christie episode. Understand, this is an episode where I feel for Doug. And I question how much Doug is really in control. Truly. How does Doug Christie not follow through on his own messaging? I've known Doug for years. I had the privilege of working with Doug when we worked together at Sacktown Sports 1140. I've shared time on the air with him, and I've listened to him speak on basketball and defense and the passion that he has for the game for years. And Doug does not waste words. Doug speaks extremely intentionally in everything that he says. That's who he always has been. So when Doug speaks about the standard defensively and defending 94 feet, and we have to be defensive minded, and if you play defense, that's going to get you and keep you on the floor. If you're not going to play defense, you're not going to play, period. And yet his actions as a coach and his rotations, especially in these last two games where the Kings have given up 3 40-point quarters, Doug Christie's actions did not follow through. He kept the same starters and main guys out there that weren't playing a lick of defense, and didn't play guys like Keon Ellis, who are known for how they play defensively. His actions do not support his beliefs and commentary. Look, I never, ever once expected Doug Christie to make this roster into a defensive powerhouse or even a good defensive team. Maybe average is the best I could have hoped for, but certainly not good. He's not a miracle worker with this group. So I had realistic expectations in that sense. But I expected Doug's words to carry meaning and for him to be able to follow through on it. Because I know Doug Christie is a first-time head coach. And I know Doug Christie is on a prove-it contract. He's probably, I don't know this for sure, but I would guess he's the lowest paid coach in the league at a $2 million per year salary on essentially a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year team option. Like, I know Doug is not the most established coach in this league, period. But out of the realistic candidates that the Sacramento Kings can have, because Pat Riley ain't walking through that door. Greg Popovich ain't walking through that door. Phil Jackson ain't walking through that door. Of the realistic candidates that the Sacramento Kings can have, if Doug Christie, who has the infinite respect of the players considering he was a former player who backed up what he said on the floor with how he played in a successful NBA career, if he can't hold this team to those standards, then who can? I'm not going to pretend that it's easy to bench a Hall of Famer or multiple Hall of Famers like the Sacramento Kings have on this roster. I don't think it's easy at all to go to DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine or Russell Westbrook or any of these guys and go, hey, you have to sit down and play less because you're not playing defense, and I'm going to some of the younger guys who will play hard on the defensive end. I can't imagine how difficult that is for any coach, let alone a first-time head coach in the modern NBA, which is such a players-driven league. But if he can't do it, then who can? Who is going to walk through that door and be able to hold that standard with this roster? And if the answer is no one, then maybe, like we feared, this roster is just incapable of being held to that standard, period, and it's all a wash. It's all for naught. It leaves one to speculate. It leads me to speculate, and I don't want to do this. I don't want to stir up this hornet's nest of conspiracy theories or anything like that. But is Doug the one making the decisions? Is he? I don't believe the Doug Christie that we've known in Sacramento for years as a player, as a broadcaster, as a radio host, as a head coach, as an assistant coach, whatever. The Doug Christie we've known for years, his messaging, his words, he's always been the same. And now he's in a position as the head coach of the Sacramento Kings, and suddenly the actions don't back up the words. So suddenly, because now he's gotten in this position, Doug Christie's just changed? Well, clearly not, because as you're going to hear later on in this podcast, he still feels and believes very passionately in the defensive side of the ball. And you're going to hear him challenge his roster continuously on the standard here in Sacramento, which starts with defense. He's saying the same things, but his rotations and his actions do not back those up. So again, is Doug not able to hold this team to that standard? Is it too early in his mind to hold this team to that standard? Or are the guys sitting courtside in Scott Perry and Vivek Ranadive, are they the ones letting Doug know, hey, you're going to play these guys regardless. We're going to see what we have and maybe increase the trade value of some of them or something because they're on this roster and we're paying them $1 bajillion, so they're going to play regardless of what you think. I don't want to believe that's true. But unfortunately, when you look at the past, Scott Perry just got here. I don't attribute this to Scott. When you look at the past of this ownership and their over-involvement in decisions, including a decision as recent as trading De'Aaron Fox for Zach LaVine, that speculation is always going to exist. I don't know what to... I mean, Vivek Ranadive couldn't even sit through this entire game. Vivek left in the third quarter. Vivek is notorious for going and sitting through everything. He's always sticking around. Like, that guy is always courtside. He's the guy that's there at the start of the second half, and the entire Kings Row courtside seats, they're all empty because everyone's still getting their drinks and food in the back. But Vivek is sitting front and center regardless if the Kings are winning or losing. And he stayed in his seat through some stinkers over the years. And Vivek got up in the third quarter and left. Gone. I mean, he's lucky that the 15,000 people, some of them did, but not all of them, the 15,000 people didn't do the same thing here in the Golden One Center. Look, Doug Christie, I feel, is in an impossible situation. But it's also a situation that he kind of asked for because this is his shot. And I don't know how he gets out of it. I don't know what he does with this roster. I don't know if he can do anything with this roster other than hopefully start to hold them to the standards that he talks so passionately about. You're going to hear Doug speak on those standards and on defense at length here on this podcast coming up next. This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools. Or take advantage of the new Robinhood Strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money too. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Locked On Kings is also brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets sometimes can be a total headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in. It's the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets, fast, easy, and stress-free. One of the best things that Game Time does, it doesn't try and pull wool over your eyes or trick you into bigger paydays, right? When you first select a game and it starts showing you the seats available and the prices of those seats, once you pick your seat at the price point that you want, that's what you pay. The fees are already included in that. No hidden fees added on at the very end to make things a lot more difficult for you to finally hit checkout on that final page. Plus, you can see exactly what your view looks like. So if you want to go and see the Kings play in an arena you've never played before, or you want to go to a concert even in like a massive football stadium and you don't know what the stage is going to look like from your seat, Game Time has the most accurate seat views that you are going to find anywhere else. And they have incredible zone deals where you pick a zone. Game Time will pick the tickets for you at a big savings price. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. For the next 4.5 minutes or so, I'm going to play for you a compilation of some of the things that Doug Christie had to say in his post-game press conference after tonight's loss. And believe it or not, there's even more than this, but this is like the real meat and potatoes of what he's talking about with defense. Again, Doug Christie does not speak without a purpose. He's very intentional with the words that he uses. So I encourage you, listen to these 4.5 minutes very, very closely. We'll talk about it and what he said on the other side, but I just listen to your head coach. Listen to what he has to say. And you might roll your eyes a couple of times at some of the things that he has to say because the actions, again, don't necessarily follow through with the words. But the words are who Doug Christie is. Take a listen to it, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
There's talking about it, and then there's being about it. You can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, but there's going to be a point where the ball gets thrown up, and then there has to be actions behind what it is that you say. So that group in there has enough. There's enough depth. There's enough talent. There's all those things. There's a spirit. I'm a spirit person. And your spirit got to be right. Your spirit must be right, individually, and then collectively. And if it's not, that's what you're going to see when you get out there on that floor. It's going to be highly evident. And that's what you got to face. Basketball, there's ups and downs to it. So as low as you feel is as high as you feel. I get that. You never get too high, never get too low. But there is a level of compete, and that's what your spirit is about. Am I going to fight for my brother? Am I going to be there for my brother? Am I going to talk for my brother? Am I going to hit somebody for my brother? You know, when we played OKC the other night, you know, you win the first quarter and then you drop the rope. But they are very consistent with their approach. They're very consistent, even if it goes bad. It's not like, oh, damn. It goes bad, it's okay. We're still going to be boxes and elbows. We're going to be down in defensive stance, and we're going to have our damn hands out. Then we're going to hit somebody and rebound the basketball before anything. And then offense is supposed to be fun. That's the gift of playing defense. So first and foremost, like, you got to stop somebody. You got to take pride in that together. This is not golf. This ain't no individual sport. This is a team sport, a collective sport. That's why I said collective spirit. So, yeah, I get the question, but there's a consistency at which you need to approach something. And we see it. You guys see it. All of a sudden, it's like, damn, there they go. They playing. But it's not for long enough. In this league, that flashes, it's not it. You know, that's not good enough in our league.
Doug, your messaging has been consistent with, if you play defense, that's what's going to get you and keep you on the floor. Mm-hmm. 10 games into the season, how much is right now, like, what's the balance of letting the guys figure it out together? And
that's kind of where we're at. Because listen, I've played, and every time you make a mistake, you don't want to get taken out of the game. So, okay, there's that. But multiple times, that's when we begin to have an issue and a problem. So that's where we're at. We're trying to find that balance of allowing guys to play, because there's a rhythm to the game. I understand that. As an ex-player, I totally get it. But then there's a standard. And the Sacramento Kings are going to have a damn standard. Period. As long as I'm here, there's going to be a standard. Now, we haven't reached it yet, obviously, because that shit is unacceptable. Excuse me. Hope I don't get fined. But it's a must. There's no middle ground with this. If we really are trying to be about what we about, we're going to sacrifice for each other, not care about one end of the floor, and dive into the other end of the floor like some damn animals. Whether you can do it or you can't do it. One thing that I know about defense is there's individual defense, and we have some individual defenders, and there's team defense. And that's what it takes to be successful in this league. We have to be a team on the defensive end. That requires communication, that requires physicality, and that requires a level of compete that we did not see. And we gonna see it.
So now, before we talk about what Doug said there, because he said a lot, I want to play for you a clip of Zach LaVine and Domantas Sabonis. I asked both of them questions after the game with the defensive focus. Both of them at separate times, not in the room together, and two somewhat different questions. Both of them, Levine and Sabonis, bring up the personnel, the roster, the players on this roster, and what they're known for when talking about defense. Take a listen. Zach, we've always known Doug here to be with the defensive first mentality and the defensive first identity. Whether it's you personally or just individual guys on the team, is he strongly or specifically speaking with you guys individually about individual defense, or is it more kind of a team defensive focus?
I think everybody's understanding that that's the focus. I think that's what they came into the season with, obviously. Obviously, there's a personnel thing with that goes with that as well. Guys can go out there and play as tough as they can on defense. I said, I speak for myself. I think we've all been trying. I've been trying my ass off on defense, but you need a team collective, the right identity. Sometimes you need the right personnel out there. You're not going to ask Rudy Gobert to go out there and average 30. So he's a defensive guy though, and that's his job. But I think with the guys that we have on the team, we got to play to the right strengths of the team. And I think defensively, we got to be there for each other, help each other. But then on the other end, we got to take advantage of that. So, that's what I think, and that's what I see. I think guys are giving the right effort. It's just frustrating when we're not getting the right results.
A lot of the talking points from training camp were winning the fight and picking up 94 feet. We haven't really seen that too consistently. Has the messaging changed, or is that still the expectation?
I think that's still the expectation, just a bit more depending on personnel and who and when. After the preseason games, we kind of decided on that.
So both parties, Doug Christie and the players, in this case Levine and Sabonis, they're both right. Levine and Sabonis are saying, like, especially Levine there, is saying, like, look, our personnel, we are who we are. And Levine is saying, hey, I bust my butt on the defensive end. I work hard on the defensive end. I've worked harder than I ever had, but it's frustrating that we don't get the results. You don't expect Rudy Gobert to go out there and score 30. He's a defensive-minded player. Obviously, essentially what Zach is saying is we have a roster full of guys that are offensively driven players, very gifted offensively. That's who they've always been. And they're trying on the defensive end, but they're limited by what they can do defensively because they're not defensive players. And Domas kind of in a little tiny bitty way kind of echoed that. I asked him about like the pillars or the talking points from preseason, and essentially Domas says, like, that's still kind of the standard, but it's personnel based, and we kind of found out in the preseason like we can't really do that. So both of these guys are bringing up like, the roster doesn't fit the words, the roster doesn't fit the identity. Then you have Doug Christie, who over that 4.5-minute clip is speaking and challenging his team to take pride in defense. He says this group is capable. They can do it. They've got the talent, but they need the buy-in. They're saying completely different things, but they're contradicting each other. Because I believe that Zach is putting more effort into defense than he ever has before. I truly believe it. I've seen it. So I understand where he's coming from. I don't think he's making an excuse intentionally, but it definitely comes off that way. And I don't think Doug is saying, like, I expect this roster to suddenly be great defensively when they've never been before. This group of players has never been known for the defense, and suddenly they're going to be great defensively. What I feel Doug is saying is, no, they got to be about it. They got to take pride in that side of the floor. Like, give me if the defense doesn't work out, if we give up a bunch of points, if we lose basketball games, that's fine. But the areas that we can control, busting our butts on the defensive end, giving our all on the defensive end, fighting for each other, taking pride in the defensive end for 24 seconds of each possession on the shot clock. That's who we have to be. That's what we got to be about. That's the standard here in Sacramento. That's a direct challenge to that locker room because while DeMar and Zach and Dennis Schroeder is supposed to be good defensively, hasn't been. Sabonis, whoever, while these guys have never really been known for the defensive side of the ball, ever, they can still play hard on that side and buy into that side. That's what Doug is expecting. That's what Doug is asking for. That is the standard. I don't think this roster is capable of being good defensively, but I think this roster is capable of playing harder and giving a you-know-what on the defensive end a whole heck of a lot more than they did tonight, giving up 144 freaking points to the Timberwolves. I don't know if Doug is either going to be allowed to or is ever going to be able to truly hold this team to this standard. That's why I kind of asked him at the end, and he cut me off mid-question because he had more to say, and that's fine. Like, what I was essentially going to ask him was, like, right now you're 10 games in, like, it's kind of a trial by fire, and you haven't had this group together very much, so you're kind of putting them out there and having them work through it together. Maybe is that the reason why you're not going to Keon Ellis and you're not going to these other guys that are more defensively minded, that you're sticking with this group despite the fact that defensively they're terrible over these last 2 games? You're sticking with them. Is it just because early on you got to see what you got and have them work through it together? And the other part of that question was going to be, at what point do you move on? At what point I've given them enough of a look, and now I got to go get Keon in there or get these other guys in there and tell one of these or 2 or 3 of these high-profile offensive guys, hey, you got to take a seat because we're not winning basketball games because you're not playing defense. I don't know if Doug is ever going to be able to do that with this roster. And I don't know if it's because the players won't do it, won't listen to it. If Doug doesn't feel like he has the leg to stand on to be able to hold that standard with multiple Hall of Famers offensively on this roster, or if he's got an owner and I hope not a GM, but at least an owner who won't allow him to do it. I don't know. I don't know, and I should know, but I don't. This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than on FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of games or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is getting new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So take that $5 and put it on the easiest bet you can find. Put it on the over for points allowed for the Sacramento Kings at this point. It'll probably hit. And then you'll get $300 in bonus bucks for you to really have some fun on FanDuel. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. A couple player-related things that I want to talk about before we wrap up here. Harsh things to say, and the players that we're going to talk about, 4 players, all of them starters. Domantas Sabonis got absolutely destroyed by Rudy Gobert tonight. Absolutely destroyed by him. Right? Like the numbers, in some sense, might look better for Sabonis. Sabonis had, 20 points, 13 rebounds. Gobert, 19 points, 12 rebounds. So Sabonis has Gobert by a point in both of those categories. But there's no question who was the better, far more effective player tonight. It was Rudy Gobert. Domantas Sabonis, this is the worst we've ever seen him as a King. And I know he's still playing through injury. His rib is still bothering him. He was holding his rib when he was doing like handshakes to go out onto the floor. And he was grimacing and holding his ribs multiple times over the course of this game. Domas is not 100%. He's not right. And what I appreciate about Domas, he was asked about it after the game, and he said that's no excuse. If I can play, I can play. I'm going to play. So I like that Domas isn't making an excuse for himself. I'm not going to make an excuse for him either. Domantas Sabonis, this is the worst that he has ever looked as a Sacramento King consistently. He is not the same guy that he was over the past few years, not even close to the all-star caliber player, all-NBA caliber center that he's been here in Sacramento, and he's making the most money now that he's ever made before. Kings need dude to wake up and get going, or they're in a world of hurt. Rudy Gobert should not be dominating you the way he did in this game. Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan had good scoring nights. LaVine got back to his normal self. Offensively, he was not good. Well, he's been dealing with lower back soreness, and he barely shot against OKC on Friday night. Tonight, he looked good offensively, 26 points. DeMar DeRozan, 22 points. Does it matter? Like, their scoring feels so irrelevant and was so irrelevant because of how bad the defense is. Like, you got 48 points from those two guys. 48 points, and it did not matter one bit, with the exception of, like, LaVine was going a little bit in the first quarter, and he hit, like, his third 3 of the game to end that first quarter, and the Kings still gave up 30-plus points in that quarter and were trailing at the end of the quarter 31-25. Like, the scoring was irrelevant. These guys are incredible scorers, incredible offensive players. If you're going to be this horrendous on the defensive end, it makes your elite level scoring completely obsolete. It does not matter. Those guys need to figure that out. They can't just score the basketball and hope that that's enough. Finally, Dennis Schroeder. I'm going to try not to beat up the guy too much because he's shooting terribly over these last 2 games. He went 1 of 6 tonight, 3 points. I think he had 5 total points in the last 2 games. Like, offensively, Dennis Schroeder is not doing a thing. And the difference with tonight compared to the other night, Dennis Schroeder only had 2 assists compared to 8 the other night. At least the other night he was distributing the basketball. Schroeder didn't do a damn thing in this game. Didn't do anything. And Schroeder's also supposed to be a defensive first type guard. Like, that's what he's talking about. Like, I made my name for myself in the league and in basketball starting on the defensive end. He's supposed to be the Mr. 94 feet guy that's supposed to set that standard or be the extension of Doug Christie. Is that Dennis Schroeder ever going to show up more than flashes or every once in a while? I know Schroeder has made big plays in the Kings' wins. That's great. He's made big plays in the 3 out of 10 games that the Kings have won. Whoop-de-doo. What about the other 7? And it's not, of course, all on Schroeder, but he is not playing well. The Kings need these starters to wake up, or hopefully Doug Christie will make the moves that he needs to make in order to start winning basketball games. Because as much as we just talked about, like, maybe it's a trial by fire and he just needs these guys to play together for the start of the season and see what he has and get them comfortable and blah, 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 blah. Well, if you're about winning basketball games, you're in a 3-7 hole now to start this season. I know you got 72 games remaining, which could be a blessing or a curse, but you don't have the luxury of being able to take the time that you need to get right because you could fall into such a big hole that you can't climb out of. Unless, like, not winning is your goal, in which case you're doing great, sweetie. I don't know, man. I feel for Doug. I genuinely feel for Doug. This is what he wanted. Like, you wanted this challenge. Like, welcome to basketball hell. But I think Doug is just in an impossible position with a horrendously constructed roster that's always been horrendous. The talent on this roster is undeniable. And this roster will deliver us moments and fun games and some fun wins every once in a while. But at the surface, at the core, this roster is fundamentally flawed. And it's going to take more than one summer and signing Dennis Schroeder and trading Jonas Valanciunas to fix that. Scott Perry has a lot of work to do. Want to hear from you now. Leave your thoughts at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. Let it fly. I want to hear from you. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.